Hello Tuesday. This is from Econ Monitor, Nouriel Rabini's blog. One of the top questions for our time: how will peak oil affect the economy? So it should be good, but it is actually very frustrating. I've had it open 6th of September there yet for a while on a tab and wondering what to do with it. There's none of it that I could pull out and just put in as one post and reply to it, or talk about it, or talk to it, as the modern people say. So I'm going to dedicate the whole of this to this one article. Summary: peak oil might hit sometime during the next 5 years. Fair enough. Benefit of the doubt so far. How might this affect the world economy? Question mark. We examine important that means we all of us, we very much all of us, are going to examine important dynamics about oil prices, some misunderstood by many writing about peak oil, from doomsters to cornucopians. The bottom line: we cannot reliably forecast what will happen. Peak oil might have little effect or crush the economy. And I think that is fair enough. Crush the economy, we'd think probably should be favoured, but it's not absolutely certain that it will, although it probably will. This post discusses the effects of rising oil prices on the global economy. So we go in. Comforting news from the past, which I'm not too happy with, this comforting news stuff, but there we go. Give him the benefit of the doubt. As oil prices rise, what happens to the extra money consumers and businesses spend on oil? Many doomsters assume the money gets burned. Do they? Not so. Both history and theory shows that the beneficiaries of higher oil prices spend the money. They invest it to increase output. Yeah, problems possible, probable. Like everybody else, they spend some of their new wealth. Some of that flows back to products and services produced by oil-consuming nations. Again, fair enough. But there are a few problems there. That kind of implying that everything will be swimmingly okay if money is transferred, let's say, from the United States to Saudi Arabia. Now, I know that's a hugely bad example because the United States doesn't get much oil from Saudi Arabia, but it gives us a good example. So, people in the United States spend more money on more expensive oil from Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia then, with the money that they've got, the dollars, the greenbacks, buy, say, Caterpillar earth-moving equipment, and the money then is back into the United States. Obviously, this isn't a watertight thing because they're going to buy sushi from Japan and things like that. But there is another point in there as well, which should be brought out, that the way the economies are now set up, it looks like that as the money comes into the United States, it's on its way to Caterpillar, let's call them the top 1%, get their cut as it goes past. The bankers, the lawyers, the CEOs, and when it comes down to it, the investors in stock of Caterpillar, bondholders with dividends and all sorts of things like that. Not that much gets down to the workers that made the Caterpillar diggers, that actually had to pay the extra prices to drive into work. So there are lots of nuances there, but it's only a 6-line paragraph, so 5-line paragraph, so we can't expect everything to be explained in there, and I can't explain everything either. It is very tricky. Why then do higher prices slow the economy? Oil producers, e.g. Gulf princes, tend to have higher savings rate than consumers, e.g. me, him, their savings rate increases even more when oil spikes up, aka a form of the permanent income theory, as people save some of a windfall. And that is fair enough. I mean, if the oil price spikes up, a government, Saudi Arabia let's say, gets in an awful lot more money than it was prepared for, and it has not got prepared plans for spending it. So for a short while there is a stock of money that isn't circulating, and I can just about go for that. This in effect takes money out of circulation, slowing the growth of global real GDP. Now, yeah, all right, we can go for that, but it's seeing it's a short article, I don't think it's a crucial thing to be writing about, but still. Then number 2 is the number 1 factor and major unknown, the rate at which oil production drops. Interesting. How will oil production change during peaking? Oil production change during peaking. Peaking is a process, not a point. And I say, yes, all right, it's a process, not a point. But I will note that if somebody is saying it's a process, not a point, keep your eye on them, because you can easily argue that it is a point. So if they want to have it as a process, it could be that they're just using it as an excuse to fudge the entire situation. This curve, production over time, might shape the 21st century and determine the fate of nations. I think that's fair enough. You know, the curve down the backside of the peak, over the peak and down the backside, the shape of that slope downwards could well shape the 21st century. Often economic impacts result from rates of change more than levels. I'll leave you to think about that, but yes, that's fair enough. It's, you know, it's not the tuk-tuk-tuk, it's the speed it's going down. Okay. But a doubling of prices during a year means hyperinflation. That's horrible. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. And I'll throw in here, it doesn't even mean inflation. A doubling of prices, let's say the price of oil goes... No, gas at the pump in the United States goes from $2 a gallon to $4 a gallon. That is not hyperinflation, and it is not inflation. Now, when I say it's not inflation, that it's not inflation according to the Fed. Now, the Fed, I've done enough of this to show how important the Fed is and what they think of things, whether it's right or not, whether you agree with it, whether I agree with it, whatever. It's what the Fed thinks. Now, if the price doubles from $2 to $4, price of gas, gallon, in a year, that is not inflation. Now, if the price of gas at the pump goes 240, and 240, 280, 320, 360, 4, that is inflation for the Fed. But a one-up spike, even if it stays at $4, that is not inflation according to the Fed, because it's gone 2 to 4, it's done it once and stays there. That is not inflation. Gradually going up is inflation according to the Fed. All right, that's the way that they do their messing about, based on that. Not $2 to $4 is not inflation. And that's not just because it's not in the basket, the CPI and the core inflation, all that. It just doesn't count. If it's not in the, if it's a one-off, they don't consider it inflation, although the prices paid have gone up. I know it's a bit weird, but there it is. So where were we? Hyperinflation? No, it's not hyperinflation, but only trivial effects when occurring over 25, but it's only trivial when it occurs over 25 years. When it's smooth, obviously, who cares anyway? Free markets adapt rapidly to changing circumstances, but the process takes time. Fair enough. Rapid changes create disruptions, yes, even recessions. Agreed. So the 2 to 4 could cause a recession. The Fed might or might not, let's say, call it inflation. But it's not hyperinflation, and there will be a getting used to it. But I think he's a bit disingenuous as having it as a 1 year compared to 25 years. That's kind of saying, over a 25-year period, we can get used to anything, which, of course, we can. See, I've got nothing much to rip into this fella about. The whole thing is just a bit off. Scenarios, some bleak and some hopeful. Global peaking, like that of individual oil fields, would wreck the world. Global peaking, like that of individual oil fields, would wreck the world, as long as they were like the UK North Sea, depleting at 7% a year, or Cantarell at 30% a year. Doomsters usually assume that the world production will follow the same pattern, which is absurd. Now this is crap, because I'm sure that I haven't checked, but I'm sure the North Sea is going down quicker than 7% a year. Cantarell is about 30, as I remember. Offshore things in the water go down very quickly. Let's say 20 as an average. Cantarell's a bit excessive maybe, and maybe the North Sea is a bit less. But it's very big the way it drops off. Onshore it goes off slower. But from what I've read, even from the oil people, it is at about 7% onshore, so it is not the slightest bit absurd. So, if I say it's not absurd, and I can prove it to him that it's not absurd, then global peaking like that of individual fields would wreck the world. So, because I can easily prove it to him. So, presumably the world will be wrecked then. This is just, I feel so petty doing this. I don't have the information. I don't know. And I agree with him. It's very, very, very difficult to get the information. But I don't like the way he's done it. Rising prices have spurred the rapid development of unconventional sources. What has that got to do with the first part of this paragraph? I don't like it when people mash paragraphs together. We're on conventional offshore oil fields, and then we get rising prices have spurred the rapid development of unconventional sources, as though that's got anything to do with it. It hasn't. Deep ocean oil is called an unconventional source, and it is, because it's not just stick a straw in the ground. Oil and natural gas from tight rocks, horizontal drilling and cracking, and alternative energy equals solar, wind and biofuels. Yeah, they're doing it. Good, fine. I'm sorry, this is a horrid video, and if you're sticking with it, I'll just apologise for it, because I think this is more me getting this article out of my system as opposed to doing you any good. But I don't think it'd do anybody any harm to analyse what a horrible muck of information this is. So anybody trying to sort this out has first to get all this information sifted and laid out properly in the brainium so it can be thought about. This fella cannot think about it at all, because it's obviously not all sorted in his brainium. And I'm quite sure that most all people that are in charge of anything to do with this haven't got it sorted in their brainium at all either. A long plateau or slow decline might have little effect on the global economy, especially since the rise in oil prices during the past decade has sparked the adaptation process. Okay, yeah, it has. But hey, price elasticity of demand measures how demand changes in response to price changes. Over a year, only large oil price changes greatly affect demand, low elasticity, but over a generation the elasticity of demand is far larger. As we saw in the previous oil cycle, oil prices spiked in 1972. By 1979, these dynamics kicked in strongly. After 7 years of rising oil prices, global oil demand was flat for the next 14 years. And you go, frustrated with this as well. At that time, the 70s, the United States, again, we'll just use them as an example, did what Saudi Arabia now does. It just poured oil into power stations and made electricity from just oil, pouring oil in. The prices went up during those problems, so they changed over to coal. And that changeover and other effects maybe did make global oil demand flat for the next 14 years, although I doubt it. I bet it was up a bit. But they can't do it again. But there will be demand destruction, most certainly when the prices go up. Look out of the window to see the same thing happening today. Higher oil prices spark fuel shifting, e.g. electric cars and biofuels. Capital spending to increase efficiency, e.g. hybrid cars, and demand destruction, e.g. driving less. Yeah. In America, they're driving less. As a result, oil demand remains unchanged since 2004. Oil demand or oil usage, what's he talking about? Oil demand has been flat for 7 years? I don't think so. Or does he mean just in the United States? Even so, I don't think so. Has he factored in China and India? I don't think so. Despite the almost 30% rise in world real GDP since then? I don't think so. Many confuse this flat demand with peak oil, an inability to increase productivity. So what he's saying is, this isn't peak oil since 2005, as quite a few people say. It's that there's just, the demand isn't there. But does this sound too stupid to you? It sounds stupid to me. People confuse this oil demand and use. I mean, if there is 85 million barrels a day of production out there to buy and use, that's it. You use it. That's it. You can say, well, there's been no more demand than 85 million barrels, or there's been no more use than 85 million barrels. Of course, that bloody well hasn't, because there hasn't been there to use. Oil producers also respond to prices. Most producers have invested to increase production. They have, but aren't increasing production. As have developers of unconventional and alternative energy sources. Yes, they have, and why are they doing that? Offsetting this, OPEC, largely Saudi princes, have tightened their taps to keep oil prices near their break-even point, i.e. at a point which they balance their budget. I could go on for an hour about that. The effect of peak oil depends on the net effect of these factors. Unfortunately, we cannot reliably estimate them. And again, yes, always we come back to this. Energy is one of the most important things in the world, and we just do not have the real facts about it. Nobody does. Oh, we've got another one. Yeah, okay, this is the last one. So I'll slip in another apology for just going on about this stupid article. Oil is not our only energy source. Well, over the short-term periods, we focus on the supply and demand for liquid fuels, i.e. oil, natural gas, biofuels and synfuels. Liquid fuels play a vital role in the world economy, transportation. Over decades, there might be large-scale switching from oil to other sources. Well, if there isn't oil there and you want to move something, you'll have to switch it to other sources or not move whatever you want it to move. For example, instead of gasoline cars, we'll use electricity, which will burn what? Gas and coal. Or fuel cells burning natural gas from shale. Yeah, gas will probably tide the United States over for about 4 years, 3 months, 2 days. So the analytical focus will shift from oil to energy. Bravo, bloody vo. Yeah, switch, it should be. If you ever want to sort this out in your brainicle, you've got to think about it as energy and not oil and gas and coal and try and get that in. Maybe somebody's got the brain the size of a planet that can sort that out, but otherwise you have to think about these things as energy. Sort out, there are many different ways of using one unit for energy, but energy is what it must be if you want to sort it out in your head so you can think about this. The result of these changes in energy production and consumption might be a plateau or slow decline in energy use, even after peak oil. If we are lucky and oil production drops slowly after peaking, these things receive too little attention in the peak oil community, and I know that the rest of the last couple of lines are rubbish. What does that last paragraph mean? I don't know. This is on the Rubini site. All right, it's not even a person with a name, but it's Marcus. What's his face, isn't it? Fabius Maximus, and he is a genius. I've come across his work for the last, well, seeing I've been into this only 4 years, but I've bumped into him an awful lot, and he is a genius. There's no doubt about it. He's got what it takes upstairs. He really knows a lot about a lot. I mean, if you want to push somebody forward on your quiz team or something that's a real boffin type, he's it. And he just has not got this sorted out in his brain. And if somebody with his brain size can't get this sorted out in his brain, there's absolutely no chance that any politician will do it, or any advisor of a politician, or even somebody running an oil company. They've got an oil company to run. They're not going to get this sorted out. Nobody's going to get this sorted out. So we're just going to muddle through. Because that is just... Thanks very much, but... it doesn't help. It just confuses. But hey. So, if you got to the end of this, I'm bloody sorry. Bye.